Okay. Welcome everybody to the February 27th edition of the Contributor Experience GitHub Administration Subproject meeting. We are covered by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct. Please be excellent to each other. We have, hello. We have meeting notes and that kind of stuff. The agenda is going to be fairly loose today, as this is the first time that the subproject is meeting in roughly about 6 months. But we're going to at least start doing this more regularly. For anyone that isn't up to date, we are going to be doing this on the 4th Thursday of each month. We may have ad hoc conversations or meetings as needed. If that's not enough, but we're going to try and meet regularly, at least once a month, just as a touch point to keep us organized. Because I know that we as a sub-project are doing lots of things, but just haven't been like fairly organized about them. So we're going to work on that. If you haven't already, please add your name to the attendees list. In the meeting notes. Thank you, Bob, for repasting that. So first, I wanted to get organized, and I'm going to share my screen. The Kubernetes over there.
So just to mention, I did not know we had a project board. And it would be cool if we had a team to represent the people who are doing GitHub administration, but not doing like the full scope of GitHub administration, so like NMCs, so that we could have access to the project board to manipulate that as well.
Oh, like a GitHub team?
Yeah. And whether that turns into more permissions somewhere else one day, who knows?
That is fair. I'm going to add that to the notes. Okay, let's try this. Share. Can you see screen? Sweet. Okay. So we're gonna bring over the project board. Yeah, so this is the one that I added to the agenda. Here's the button to hide this whole thing. Oh, I'm just gonna drag it out of the way. Okay. Can't see my frickin' title bar. Okay, so deprecating Incubator in favor of SIG. I feel like we're pretty close on this one.
I can comment on this a little bit because I've talked to everyone involved in the last ones.
Sure.
So autoscaling has not responded to me regarding moving it. I poked him twice about it. I think once was last month. I haven't poked him since. SIG storage has the open issue about external storage right now. They were just waiting for some final things to finish up. And CubeAWS is kind of in a weird place. It's currently owned by SIG Cluster Lifecycle. They don't actually know how it became owned by them when the AWS SIG was folded under cloud provider. They don't necessarily want it because it pretty much competes directly with COPS. The other thing is SIG Cloud Provider has said that they would potentially take it if no one else is interested in owning it. but it might also be worth spinning it out if no one, actually wants to own it.
Yeah. That I don't know exactly how to do, because technically, like that starts getting into like legal questions and that kind of stuff, because code is owned by the Kubernetes authors, and there's like CNCF and rights and all that kind of stuff. Like splitting it completely out of the project, the only precedent for that was Helm, but Helm was moving out of under us to the CNCF umbrella.
I thought there was also like Auger from ages ago that actually is now owned by someone's personal account.
And I think the Container D CRI implementation went over to the Container D org.
Okay, so maybe there are some other precedents to kind of look up there.
And,
Possibly CNI as well. Some of the CNI plugin stuff there before.
Cryo, I think there's not.
So I mean, I feel like maybe that's last resort-y.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it just depends on like how much of this we want to.
Yeah. So like SCL
how much we want to support. Like it looks under active development if there's like continuing to be releases and that kind of stuff like 10 days ago.
There's a couple people that are still pretty active in like maintaining it. When I was talking to like SCL, they said if they would take it, they would ask for like, have it be renamed and things like that, and a few other things. But again, it's sort of just like everyone is kind of, tepid about, owning it.
What's
Yeah.
did you already go to Insights? Would you mind going to Insights? Get an idea of the graph. Like if people are actively contributing on this, then.
They definitely are. Well, I went to releases and there was like a release like 6 days ago, 10 days ago.
Okay. It's got movement.
Yeah. Like it's still like going.
It's mostly David McCormick.
Yeah. Well,
but ultimately, like the way of the world right now is like you need a SIG sponsor. So if like a SIG needs to determine that this is like worthy of sponsorship, worthy of being included in our ecosystem. Not, like the other possible option is, we sunset it on our part. And it's open source, like fork.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the tepidness is because they want to make sure that there are contributors for it or maintainers for it, right? Like if you give me a project and say I now have to maintain that, I'm not super excited about it. But if I think if there were a set of people to do a sub project for this, then maybe it could be fun. So that's what I was wondering about the contributor graph.
At least for SCL specifically, they just like, we have COPS. COPS is a very large and active project. Why?
Why? Oh, why?
Yeah. Which is a fair thing to say, as far as like limiting, how far cluster lifecycle goes, as far as like just splitting their attention into a whole bunch of different paths to manage Kubernetes clusters, because not only are there a bunch of options that are like official upstream options for administrating clusters, there's also like an entire ecosystem outside of Kubernetes of like, hey, here's a different way to go and install a cluster. Okay. From our perspective, I think we just kind of like keep chugging along. I'd like to maybe talk about like deadlines for this kind of stuff, for like, hey, folks making decisions, but that might need to be like reported back up into ContribEx for the SIG to make a decision of like, hey, this has gone on for a while and we would like to, you know, recommend that an action be taken here. What that action is right now, I'm not sure, but I'm guessing like if we can't get SIG adoption of things, my gut says, okay, we're just gonna move you to retired and we're gonna archive the repo.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess maybe setting a post KubeCon deadline, maybe 2 months or something. Does that sound crazy?
Yeah. Well, okay, so we're at end of February right now.
Yeah.
If we went like, I'd even be more generous than that. Maybe say like end of May.
Okay.
So that gets us past KubeCon, and then like.
What about splitting the difference? End of April, and May seems long.
If we said end of April, except that anything that was in flight is good. So like if we had like a direction for things where it's like, okay, we've got a SIG sponsor, it's going to move into K-SIGs, but we're still just sorting out the logistics, we just keep going. But if we literally don't have a SIG sponsor for these repos, nobody wants to adopt it, then
that
like
should only
end of
be
April, we make the call that like, okay, we're going to start processing and sending out notices that we're going to retire these.
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me.
For the autoscaling repos, I'm pretty sure they're going to be migrated because they still, I think, were active. It's just getting the ACK from the SIG chairs. External storage, again, has already been like slated to go. It's just really CubeAWS that needs the like push to decide
Right.
what to do.
Who are we waiting on in autoscaling? I'm just looking it up. I don't remember who the autoscaling chairs are right now.
I believe it's just
there's only
person
one?
right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh boy. We've got a different problem.
With my steering hat on, I have other problems with this.
Yeah, I know I mentioned that. I think I mentioned that to Paris, but not steering in general.
Where's my
Steering AI?
Yeah, I'm adding something to my personal steering to-do list.
Sorry.
Okay. Different tab, different to-do list. Okay. So we're still waiting basically on Marcin right now to like acknowledge, hey, yes, this is going to move. These are still active and we're going to move them over into K-SIGs. External storage is in progress with SIG storage. And then it's just CubeAWS getting like cluster lifecycle and cloud provider to kind of settle. Is anybody going to own this? Yes, no. If no, then we just move to retired.
They really both said that they would begrudgingly own it, but like that. Yeah.
Which I can understand. I can understand not necessarily wanting to like kick folks out of the project, but like sponsoring means, okay, we're going to actively support and actively maintain the health of this project. And if all of the maintainers go away, we're assuming responsibility for this project. So,
so we're
okay.
setting the end of May as the deadline for all repos, or is it just CubeAWS?
All, but we need, like, we expect that autoscaling is going to move too. like storage is in flight. So I don't, like, if it's in flight and it's good and storage wants to continue adopting it, we don't need to be like hard with deadlines. We just need to work through the process. I know I just ended up, like, I did an external migration into K6 that started in October of last year, but it just took them a while to get all the ducks in the row to actually migrate that was the secret source CSI driver from external in the K6. So I know things just take time. I don't mind things languishing around if it's like continuing to move, even if it's a turtle. But yeah, I just don't want, at least my concern is, I don't want repos that are sitting around and nobody's owning them. And we're just never getting rid of Incubator. Okay. Any other comments or thoughts on the Incubator to SIGs move? Cool. And let's move on. I'm going to make it bigger so I can actually move around here. Let's look at the in progress stuff. So rename Fatabot.
So we did.
Where do we end up with this one, Nikita?
Changes. So we did make changes to some files long ago. Honestly, I actually don't remember what went wrong, but yeah, it went off my radar in between, but I can like take a look at it next week.
Okay. That would be cool. To get that one nudged along, because we inverted. Oh, right. They were having like 403s making comments. I wonder if we got caught in like a spam filter of some kind. On GitHub's end. Okay. So just need to kind of revisit that one and see where we're at and try and nudge that one along further. Automation does not remove repo collaborators. I think this one was, we had like multiple parallel folks working on this functionality in Parabolos. Like both Peter from Red Hat and Nikita were working on something similar. And then I think they both just stalled out.
Yeah, I was talking to Steve before and he said they'd look into it, but then I guess they didn't. So it's back on us.
Thank you, Bob, by the way, for being diligent with notes. So on this one, I'm going to follow up with Steve.
So 2 questions. 1, does this meeting need to be longer? And 2, in general? And 2, are there any super high priority things that, not just the stuff that's in progress, or there are any super high priority takeaways that we need to look at?
Maybe, and not from my end, I don't think. Oh, so I guess the other thing that I'd like to ask out there. So I know that in San Diego, we met with the GitHub folks as far as providing feedback and having that feedback loop with GitHub on upcoming features and things that are going. So being mindful that there are NDAs with GitHub and that this is a public recorded call. Is there any updates from those things? In particular, I think it was Bob and Ihor who were meeting, were like going to meet with that group at GitHub. Did those meetings ever happen? Are they progressing? Is there anything to bring out of those?
Outside of an initial meeting, there really wasn't much. It's been access to sort of like another private repo with its own issues. And not much has come from that. We've seen some of the stuff that they were working on started to come out, like the notifications rework. But I honestly wouldn't really call it sufficient. I was actually going to, because I think one of them is going to be at scale. I was going to try and sync up with them to try and they haven't really conveyed what their priorities in terms of the features they're working on is. That's something I would definitely like to see. And there's been sort of a lot of people, like one of the big things that's been coming up recently is just boards and how they're a bit problematic. And I can save this for another conversation or something like that if you want to hear about some of the chatter that's been going on. Again, publicly recorded thing, not quite sure if, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, we can maybe even just revisit.
My question
after.
is,
Go for your.
yeah, we can probably schedule something for KubeCon if the GitHub folks will be there. So probably I can email them and ask if somebody will be from GitHub at KubeCon, so we can meet face to face. If there is any need in that. So similar that we had in San Diego. I was not able to attend that event, but I heard that it went well. So if we need something like that, we can start planning.
Unconference?
The whole week is
the specific reason why that came to mind is I know like on the repo collaborator automation, like one of our umbrella issues as far as feedback that we provided to GitHub is like they provide an option to disable repo collaborators, like that you just can't have, well, sorry, specifically outside collaborators, and like you can't add them from GitHub, except it's a feature that's behind their enterprise paywall. So even the teams for open source kind of like subscription level that we have, or the we have a paid subscription on the Kubernetes org and Kubernetes security org that allow us private repos, but even those subscription levels don't include that ticky box. And the feedback that I provide them is, please take that ticky box from behind your paywall, because that's that's a very useful feature, including for open source organizations to have. But there's been kind of radio silence on that. That particular issue may be one that, instead of like us building automation around it, just prevent, which would, somebody adds a repo collaborator and we remove it a few hours later. It'd be great if we could just disable that ability to have outside collaborators, period.
I will follow up and see if if they are going to be at scale, and if I can sync up with them then, and I'll bring the laundry list of things, because there's been a few other things too.
I mean, how egregious is, how frequently are people doing that, the outside collaborator thing?
I went through, I think, at November, December, and booted out most of the outside, pretty much all the outside collaborators. But they've already started to come back into Kubernetes SIGs.
Yeah.
I looked the other day and saw 2 or 3 people. And I'm just like,
Come on.
How do I give people access to my repo? Do I go through the membership process where like I open up an issue and people sponsor and then they're actually members? Or do I just go in there myself and go like, write access, go?
That's crazy. Why would I follow the membership process? So one question that I had that cannot be solved in a minute was around binding user IDs in Parabolus instead of usernames, because I noticed that when people get kicked out, if they change their usernames. Later, Aaron. And yeah, I know that. That's it. That's the tweet.
Yeah, I think we talked about that. I don't know if it was in a DM or if it was on Twitter or where that conversation was, Steven. I remember that one.
Yeah, might have been DM.
Would you mind popping an issue in for that?
Yeah,
because
sure.
that is something that we can look at. If there would be like some design work in Parabolos, both from a like usability perspective, and like technically, like the field is there in the API, but just like all of our YAMLs right now are just people, and it would definitely be like a change to go like, oh, we're going to list a numeric ID and then like a comment with a name or something like that.
What about like you could have a file at the root or something like that just has like run make and it generates the mapping of the numeric ID to the GitHub ID.
I mean, it's going to be the same. It's got to be the same as or something similar to the way we're doing team changes right now. We should still be able to use something human readable that does magic to translate the ID and ensure that, right? Maybe popping up a warning that says.
That's the sticky part, because the thing that we're trying to correct for, the only reason we go with the numeric ID would be when folks change their name on GitHub, and then we lose track of the friendly name.
Well, I mean, then it becomes a function of some warning or report, right? We could warn on an ID change, or we can warn on a name change as opposed to like the ID is not going to change, right? And then an admin can go in and fix the IDs or fix the names within the config, right? So that way we're not kicking users out of the org, right?
Let's open up an issue about it, and we can discuss, because that one will definitely take a little bit of UX design, both on our part as well as like investigating what the right way to do that through the API is. But it is possible, because there is like a unique immutable user ID that's tied to folks, and that way we can, if we did do that, it'd be both good for we're not kicking folks out, but also from a security perspective, if somebody renames and then somebody claims the old username, right now we just invite the old username into our org.
Didn't that sort of happen once with Quentin?
Attack vector.
When he had his two accounts, or
Quentin Hull 1 and 2,
Yeah, I think there was something about that. Yeah. I think he lost his second factor, is I think what got him locked out.
Yeah, and then he couldn't.
And then GitHub was like, we can disable your second factor, but there's like a 6-month timeout on it. So that, so that he needed to make an entirely new GitHub account for 6 months.
Wow.
Just so that he could still interact with GitHub, because his first account, like he didn't have the second factor for it. Okay, we're over time. Thanks everybody for coming. We have some takeaways that we're going to update some things. We do have a link to the board now. If there's anything that like comes up in the interim and that kind of stuff, feel free to send it out to the ContribEx list or talk about in the ContribEx channel in Slack. Great. Thanks all. Cheers.
Thanks, team. See you.
Peace.